Hello and welcome back to World of Warcraft and another challenge mode dungeon run. My name is Lumin and right now I present to you a gold run on Temple of the Jade Serpent. I enjoyed this one a lot, and this is one that we had to do a couple of times because, as you've seen, we've got a couple of different party members that rotate in and out. This time around, we've got Zohee, the Discipline Priest, Safflower, the Destruction Warlock, Jemma the Frost Mage, and Seyni the Combat Rogue, if I'm not mistaken. And usually we also just have another Warlock and sometimes a Hunter that joins us. This time around, however, the Rogue. And I think that this group was pretty ideal because having the Rogue in the group, Tricks of the Trade helps a lot. We use Tricks to pull a couple of mob packs to us. It just speeds things up a little bit, and Rogues obviously have a lot of good interrupts, and the damage is great. But I think that for the most part you should try have as much range DPS as you can, because in challenge modes, anything close range, anything melee range is just a struggle. It really is, especially for the healer. But let's get to this run. I had a good time in Temple of the Jade Serpent, but there are a couple of packs that are both difficult and frustrating because there's some luck involved, and the problem is that they come up a little bit later in the instance, and thus you kind of squander the mostly good progress that you made until that point if you mess up on that pack. But right here from the start, we do the entire first passageway leading up to Wise Mori in one pull, and because of that, obviously, the DPS just hold back a little bit. You know, you can't go in guns hot here as a DPS because the tank can't be expected to put damage or get a large amount of threat on every single mob before he or she actually stands still. So like here, our mage puts down a Ring of Frost, and then I slowly start just kiting the mobs in a circle so that, you know, people don't stand, or myself specifically and the rogue, don't stand in the corrupt puddles on the ground, and you can actually just avoid, or try avoid, the gushing pools of damage that come out of the floor when you kill the elementals. Every time you kill one of them, a couple more droplets spawn. The fight itself isn't too difficult if everyone just stays out of the damage on the ground. You can see there's a whole lot of it just lying there right now. If I was standing in that, I probably would have been dead already. So if you do just move out of the stuff on the ground, which is something, well, you should know how to do if you attempt in challenge modes, then you should be okay. Otherwise, I do feel we wasted some time on the droplets here. We didn't need to stand still DPS, and then we could have moved on to Wise Mori and started on the boss, and it wouldn't have really been a problem. But we were kind of comfortable at this point already with the timer. We were sure that this first bit was not where we were going to make or break our run. Now this boss is, if I'm not mistaken, exactly the same as on Heroic or any other mode you want to do it on. He casts Hydro Lance in the segments of water surrounding him, and 4 corrupt living water come at you before the boss is actually attackable. So you've got to kill the corrupt living water. They also just spawn these water fountains that come out of the ground and do a lot of damage, along with the corrupt droplets. So it's a little bit difficult to find a good spot to actually stand. If you have a lot of melee DPS, it's going to be even more difficult. And if I am not mistaken, you are confined to a smaller area in this fight than you would be in, say, the heroic mode. So you can't actually all stand back here behind by the door where you would usually stand in the challenge mode version of this dungeon. But otherwise, I mean, the fight is simple. You can see where he's casting Hydro Lance. It bubbles the water, so you know you've got to move away. And you generally want to try and keep the mob that you tank in, or damaging, or whatever, the corrupt living water, on one of the sides, so that you don't, like I did here, get the water in the middle and then get yourself stuck in that position. But for the most part, again, this is the one boss that we kind of never messed up on. It's very difficult to lose time here. It's very difficult to make big mistakes here that will ruin your run. It's just a straight up easy boss. The Hydro Lance does a lot of damage. Like if you get hit by that, it will probably kill a slightly weaker DPS. Like one of the cloth wearing range DPS would probably die if they get hit by it, and that's not ideal. You don't want to do that. You don't want someone dying this early on. If that does happen, you just reset and start again, because it is in fact the first boss. But otherwise, I mean, for the most part, I think our discipline healer was just damaging most of this fight, because I didn't take that much damage. I have a lot of self-healing I can use, and myself and the rogue were trying to stun the elementals as often as we possibly could. Now in a moment or two is when we use our time warp, if you have heroism or whatever, this is probably the best place to use it, because if you do use it now, you will have it ready for the final boss, so you get to use it twice in one run. That's better than using it just once in one run. Do it! In this phase, you gotta stand right here on the inner circle, and as a melee, once again, it's not that bad, because you can face in any direction and still get your abilities off. It's not that difficult, and you'll see a lot of people are like jumping around, landing in the water on the outside, which will damage you, by the way. You don't really need to do that. I discovered that you can pretty much just step through that little piece of water that connects the two platforms, and it barely even damages you. Some DPS classes are better than others at doing damage on the move. Some people do this differently. Some just run all the way ahead until they're at where the beam is, then they stop and they damage for a little while. But overall, that is a really simple fight to get right. Once you take the boss down, you get a speed boost on yourself and the party, and you gotta make good use of it, because it gets you a good distance down the passage. Our Warlock, Safflower, set up some portals. We used these portals more and more as we got through the challenge modes. The portals make a big difference. You save a nice amount of time there. It also just gives your healer a bit of time to prepare. Now what we did in this run, in this pull here, is I just pulled the first 4 or 5 mobs here, and then the rogue ran by and used Tricks of the Trade and Fan of Knives on the next pack. And those are the 2 packs that you pull. So it's the little fish in a bubble, and then the first few corrupt pandas and stuff in this passageway. You do not pull the next pack, which you'll see in just a second, which is the singing bird or something like that. There's a bunch of confusing mobs in here. You don't pull those. You don't need them for your mob count, and they are actually just a kind of troublesome pack to deal with. So if you can, you avoid the next ones. Here I actually ended up using Ardent Defender and Guardian of Ancient Kings, just because the rest of the section that we're about to do is as easy as it is. I wasn't going to use my cooldowns there, so I thought, hey, why not make life a little bit easier for the healer at this point, and then, well, let my cooldowns cool down. I'll have them ready when I need them. I'll tell you where I need them in just a moment or two, but this is where we do our invisibility run. Again, you don't need these mobs, and the Songbird Queen, that's the one I was thinking of, is just, she's just annoying. Okay, she's just super, super annoying. Now, here's where a lot of groups had to make a choice. We decided we'd pull the Golden Beetle, the Tiger, and the other mob here. There's 3 of them to try and get our enemy count to where we needed it. It's the Crying Hosen. And these ones we chose to do because they are easier than the alternative. The other 3 mobs you could potentially add instead, which I will show you in just a moment or two. You'll see them. And I feel like this is the best choice, just because these ones don't do anything special. They just stand there and they basic attack you. They don't have any abilities, nothing like that. You gotta spend some time killing the Corrupt Scroll to start this event here, Lawwalker Stone Steps event. And for those wondering, you always get the same one. You always get Strife and Peril. This is once again just a DPS race. And the DPS are pretty much the only ones that can mess up hardcore here, because what you gotta do is you have to DPS, Strife, or Peril, doesn't matter where you start, until the intensity on said mob is up at 6 or 7. You can even push it till 8 if you want. We chose to do 6 or 7 to be on the safe side, because we did in our first couple of runs mess it up a few times. And if you put damage over time debuffs on them, then sometimes you accidentally ticket 1 or 2 stacks higher, and that's a problem. But this is very easy if your DPS know how to switch between 2 mobs. If they know how to switch at the right time, which they should. Okay, they're doing challenge modes on gold, for goodness sake. So you just switch between the 2 of them. You switch back to the smaller one, do damage there. It gets bigger. Other one cools down. Switch back to that over and over again. Kind of simple, easy boss. I again think that our healer Zohee here was just damaging most of the time because, well, there's not that much else to do. The bosses don't do that much damage to you. And if you have much better DPS, this just goes much faster. There are no scary or special mechanics you gotta know about here. If you damage one too much, the agony from them, this shadow AoE damaging Nova thing, will kill your party. Your healer will probably not be able to handle it. You'll die, but it's again very difficult to mess up. Now, once you're done here, the difficult part starts. Now this first half that you saw here, this was the easy half. The next part is where the difficult fun begins, and the next part is where your DPS really need to be on the ball. they need to disable a whole lot. Again, you get a speed boost here. That'll just get you to the next area. You do a lot of running around in this instance, like a whole lot. And if you have something like Stampeding Raw aspect of the pack, then you could shave a couple of seconds off. But this next room is kind of scary because you have to kill everything in the room, and the mobs themselves are just so strong, and sometimes the patrols are in really bad position, so you just can't pull anything. You gotta wait for them to reposition themselves. If you're a tank, you're gonna use pretty much all your cooldowns here. You want to interrupt as much as you can. We have a Shadow Fury going down. There's a Ring of Frost there. The Shadow Fury will be in just a second, if I'm not mistaken. I stun as often as I can. I use Avenger Shield the whole time. Power Word Barrier went down there. As you can see, you do not hold back here. Also, these mobs silence for 2 seconds every couple of seconds, and they cast a corruption type thing. It's called Shadow of Doubt on you. That's just a damage over time that deals a lot of damage. It's uncool. Okay, these packs are so difficult. We wiped numerous times in this room just because I guess our DPS didn't have as good a rotation set up yet to stun, to interrupt, to just disable them in general. These Minions of Doubt, they are painful. Seriously painful. But you gotta actually be kind of aggressive with your pulls here, because you want to do it as quick as you can. You can't afford to just hang around. You can't afford to take one group at a time. Once again, if your DPS is good, this will be easier. And by DPS being good, I mean if the people playing the classes that are doing the damage can also devote a little bit of time to interrupting, to stunning, to disabling, whatever, then you'll just have an easier time. Again, also don't stand in the stuff on the floor. There's a lot of that in all the challenge modes. Once you finish these, Liu Flameheart will come. That's the next boss. And the best idea is to just move out of the way, because when she jumps into the middle of the room, she knocks you back and deals quite a bit of damage. So if you're in range, then you will give your healer some extra work. That's uncool. It really is. And I guess it also just gives you a bit of time to prepare. You can see our healer, Zohee, actually got an amber off there, got most of her mana back, and it's okay. This boss is easy, really easy. There's nothing special about it. For melee, you just got to stay in this inner circle. You can see on the floor there's a big circle there. She'll cast flames going outward, and she'll try and knock you back into those flames if you are close to her. But for the most part, if you tank her close to the middle, then the chances are she won't even really be able to knock you that far. Or you can just move in before the waves even go out. DPS and the healer can find good spots to stand in. If they can just watch where the flames are going, then it's not so bad. It really isn't. And I suppose, once again, when the green flames go out, you don't want to stand in the Jade fire it leaves on the ground. But that's just a given. It will kill you quite quickly. When you move into the next phase, when she summons the Jade Serpent here at the end, she's about to do it now, then there's just a whole lot of Jade fire all over the place. And that's it. That's the long and short of the fight. Don't stand in the Jade Fire and you'll be okay. The dragon itself doesn't hit very hard or anything like that. And I think, again, your healer will probably just be doing quite a bit of damage in this if your DPS are staying out of what they're supposed to stay out of. Now, the next part is kind of tricky. You'll see, if you look on the right-hand side of the screen, we've got our enemy count. Now, that's because we killed the Scarab, the Hosen, and the Tiger back in the scroll room. In the room with Lawwalker Stonestep. If we didn't kill those, we'd have to kill these 3 Minions of Doubt coming out here, and it would have been a lot more difficult. Now, what we chose to do instead was send the rogue in, and he kind of failed at it. Okay, I'll put that out there. He kind of failed it, but we got it done. He failed because he died, but we sent the rogue in to pull the 3 of them. Then we snuck in along the left-hand side, and he got soulstoned back up. So, ideally, the DPS that does that wouldn't die there, but it didn't cost us the run. This ended up being a gold run, so it's okay. Doing it in this way is just recommended because you get to trade 3 very difficult mobs for 3 very easy ones, so why wouldn't you want that? Now, the reason we pull the boss all the way back here is because it gives the DPS extra time to damage him while he runs back and forth. Because he does run back to his spawn position to cast Bounds of Reality, I think it's called. Then he spawns all these Figments of Doubt, and your whole party will just run back, gather up, and then AoE the Figments of Doubt down. You can single target them down as well. It doesn't really matter. I kind of messed up in both Bounds of Reality phases by keeping the boss targeted for the most part. I was still new to tanking at this point. I wasn't really 100% comfortable yet. I also didn't use my health stones a lot, which didn't help the healer at all. But you take those down as quick as you can, kite the boss back up, rinse, repeat. That's it. He has a couple of abilities that he uses. He uses Wither, Will, and Touch of Nothingness. Touch of Nothingness is pretty much the only one that's really a problem. And it's only a problem if your group gathers up too much. You should spread out a little bit because it deals some shadow damage to one member and then all the members around it. But even so, it's not that much. Our healer didn't have any trouble with it. The only phase that really kills you is when he goes into Bounds of Reality and the Figments spawn. That's pretty much it, because they do quite a lot of damage. If you don't get them down really quickly, then that'll just be a problem. And you'll see here things just start going pear-shaped already. It happens for more than one reason. One, because we didn't get the Figments down quick enough. You'll see they start getting bigger and bigger, dealing more and more damage. And two, because our Time Warp didn't actually go off. Only the rogue got Time Warp in this phase, and that's because he died. He thought Time Warp was off cooldown, he thought it was safe to use, so he shouted on Skype, pop it now, and then, well, the mage popped it, and that was that. We still somehow managed to get the boss down here. I don't even know how, but it happened, and this was our very first gold run. It got better after this when we did it with the other party members, but you can see Safflower's already dead, Jemma's about to die, Zohee's about to die. It was messy. Super messy. Only 15 seconds now on the clock. The boss goes down, and that is that. This is one of those situations where you just say, you know, win is a win. Nothing else really matters. We got the boss down. We got the gold. Finished. So feel free to tell me what you thought about this run, how much you struggled on it, or how easy it was for you. Let me know. Check back here soon for more. Give it a like, share it, and do all that other good stuff. Most importantly though, happy gold on Temple of the Jade Serpent. Happy that.